What's up everyone, Sean here and thank you for joining me. The second edition of the Orient Star Diver 1964 was released alongside the much anticipated Orient Bambino 38 earlier this May. Now this was doubly exciting for me because I had previously missed out on the first edition of the Orient Star Diver 1964 that was released back in September 2021 with a limited 300 piece quantity outside of Japan. So I eventually went for it just about a month after it was released when my local AD, Big Time Singapore, decided to do a seriously attractive introductory promo on it, even though I wasn't exactly 100% convinced yet due to the slightly larger bezel. Since then though, it has been on my wrist and on my mind about 90% of the time, and I think it's safe to say that I'm absolutely in love with this watch, and here is why. Quick wristwatch check today before we begin. I am wearing the 1967 vintage Seamaster on a Bond NATO strap. Now the case size of this watch is listed as 41mm, but that isn't exactly the case. I'll explain why later. It has a lug-to-lug distance of 49.6mm with a lug width of a very nice 20mm. Thickness is 14.5mm thick, which is quite reasonable for this kind of watch, and it is made of stainless steel, 316L to be exact. It has a double dome sapphire crystal with a single side of anti-reflective coating and a stainless steel screw case back. The movement inside is the F6N47 that is automatic hacking and hand winding, and it has a power reserve of 50 hours. Rated to 200 meters water resistance, this is an ISO 6425 diver's watch and it retails for 1,739 Singapore dollars, but you know that's not the price that you usually pay over the counter. So I've always loved the value that Orient Star offers, even more so than Orient in fact. And I really hope that they would release a new dive watch that was smaller than their existing 43.6mm Orient Star Diver. My wish finally came true when the first edition of the 1964 Diver was first introduced in September 2021 in a 40.2mm case as an homage to the 1964 Olympia Calendar Diver. However, at $1,700 retail and a fast depleting limited quantity, I simply had to pass on it at the time and hope for a standard edition release sometime in the future. Fast forward a few months and Orient Star releases the second edition of the Orient Star Diver 1964. This time it comes as an homage to a different watch from 1964, the Calendar Auto Orient. It comes in two colors, a black dial and a black bezel, which is a very true homage to the original, and a gradation green dial and green bezel, which was inspired by the real Sando limestone cave in Japan. Both models come on a stainless steel bracelet and provide an additional silicone strap. At first sight, I really liked the new look. That is until I realized that the new bezel was slightly larger than before. Yes, it was a marginal 0.8mm difference, but it still lost a bit of the compactness that I really liked about the first one, at least to me. Fortunately, like I mentioned earlier, my AD decided to run an introductory promo at a price that I could stomach giving it a chance, and boy am I glad I did. Although the case is in fact the same one as the first edition, which measured in at 40.2mm, this new version is listed as a 41mm watch. Now that is because the bezel is now 41mm and extends ever so slightly beyond the case. Despite the relatively small 40.2mm case, however, the lug-to-lug distance comes in pretty long at 49.6mm, which is pretty much the limit of what my 6.25-inch wrist can usually take. Fortunately, however, the lugs are angled down by quite a bit, and it wears perfectly fine on me. As expected of an Orient Star, and no less a flagship sports model, the case finishing is immaculate. We have a mirror-polished finish around the entire case, including the tips of the lugs, with the only exception of a very nice straight brushing on the top faces of the lugs. I am told that this is in fact Zaratsu polishing, which would explain the crisp, clear beveling found around the lugs. While this does make the watch particularly dressy for a tool watch, do not mistake this watch for not having tool watch intentions, as they have even given it drilled lugs to allow for easier strap changes. Take note that the amount of polishing on this watch does mean that it can be a scratch magnet. In my daily wear, however, despite wearing it around the workshop quite a lot, I have seen relatively minimal wear on the polished surfaces so far. The coinage bezel is also mirror polished all around with a domed aluminium bezel insert shaped to flush with the domed sapphire crystal. The bezel indices are very utilitarian, displaying minute markers all around and a single lume pip in a triangle marker at the 12th. It has 120 unidirectional clicks that are relatively soft and fine feeling, but still stiff enough to not get knocked out of position easily. The crystal is a double dome sapphire with a single anti-reflective coating applied to the underside. Now this helps prevent it from getting scratched off and also allows the crystal to shine just that little bit more to match the dressy case finish. The sign crown at the 3 o'clock is appropriately large and easy enough to operate even with gloves on. As an ISO 6425 compliant diver's watch, this is a screw down crown. Lastly, in true tool watch fashion, we have a solid stainless steel screw case back that also has a polished finish with the usual Orient Star logo and accompanying text etched onto it. Now the black version features a glossy black dial, which is one of the standout features to me, as you don't normally see gloss dials on a tool watch. The first thing I actually thought of when I first saw the dial was the Seiko Presage Rushi dial that a good friend of mine had recently gotten. While it may not be the same level of gloss as the Urushi dial, it definitely leans towards the end of the spectrum. The dial markers are also very well done in my opinion, largely because I am a fan of round indices. This is a very true reproduction of the original Calendar Auto Orient, apart from a couple of modern updates such as the cutoff triangle at 12 to fit the power reserve indicator and the lume pip at 3 o'clock in order to meet the ISO 6425 standard. 3 lines of text beneath the printed Orient Star logo is just enough to specify this as a 200-meter automatic diver's watch without becoming overly cluttered. The hands are also very similar to the original. While I do wish that the Lollipop seconds hand extended all the way to the printed minute track, it is the same for the original Calendar Auto Orient, so I can't really criticize them for it. If you aren't keen on a black dial, however, the watch does come in one other color. Green lovers will rejoice at the gradation green dial variant being offered, which is inspired by the Ryosendo limestone cavern in Japan. Between the two though, I personally prefer the black dial simply for its more classic design as opposed to the green dial, which has a more casual and sporty feel to it. Just like other Orient Star sports models, the Lume is as impressive as ever. It charges up very fast and remains very legible in the dark. Yes, it is faux patina colored Lume, but that doesn't really bother me. I actually think it looks really good due to the classic styling of the watch. It also covers just the right amount of dial to be very legible in the dark without being too overwhelming. Now the movement in this watch is particularly impressive. Yes, it is the same old caliber F6N47 that was already previously found in the Orient Star Diver back in 2019, but it does seem like the regulation done at the factory has improved. While I previously got approximately 12 seconds per day from my older Orient Stars, the two 1964 divers that I randomly picked out and tested over the course of a few weeks have both given me an impressive +0 to +3 seconds per day when I wear it daily on the wrist. One thing that I did notice, however, is that when I don't wear it and I keep it on the dresser or in a pouch or anywhere off my wrist for an extended period of time, it tends to run a bit slow at around -5 seconds per day. Still a lot better than my Alpinist. Now this movement runs at 21600 bph or 3 Hz and has a 50 power hour reserve. For the price of this watch, I'll admit that the movement isn't much of a selling point and just more of an acceptable spec. After all, for quite a bit less, you can get a Swiss branded watch with an ETA movement with an 80-hour power reserve. Of course, the level of finishing on that watch won't be as good as the Orient Star, but it won't be too far off to be a consideration, especially if you're looking for a tool watch. That said, while 80 hours is really nice to have, I think 50 hours is pretty much the sweet spot for me compared to the conventional 38-hour ETAs, or the 40-hour Orients. You see, I tend to rotate between 2 to 3 watches at a time over the course of a week or so. So when I leave a watch on the dresser for a day, in order to keep it running, I have to make sure that I wind it up by the next morning before I go to work, otherwise it would have died by the time I got home. With a 50-hour power reserve, it would still be running by the time I get back from work the next day, and I might even only have to wind it up just before going to bed. While an 80-hour power reserve will allow you to get through the weekend easily, that tends to apply more to the 2-watch collection type of person. For most other people, including those who have a 1-watch collection, or even the I'm too ashamed to count how many watches I have collection, I think 50 hours is a very good number to aim for. Let me know what you think. Now on to the strap. While Orient isn't exactly known for having great bracelets, Orient Star on the other hand does tend to have pretty decent bracelets on most of their models. And this Diver 1964 is no exception. Unlike the Orient Star Diver I reviewed previously, which although did come with solid end links, it was still a bit disappointing to see a stem clasp on it. This time though, I am glad to see that both editions of the 1964 come with a milled clasp. This bracelet is a 5-piece link type with 2 polished links running down the middle. It features a security latch and a diver's extension and is made of the same 316L stainless steel as the case in order to prevent galvanic corrosion as required by ISO 6425. This bracelet offers a good amount of adjustability with 4 micro-adjust positions that will help you to get the perfect fit. As a full-fledged diver's watch, it is still a bit top-heavy, and I was also a bit worried that the male end links would make it wear slightly too large for me. Thankfully though, after wearing it for over a month, I've not found any of these to be a problem for me, and this is actually a very comfortable watch to wear. If you are not into bracelets however, we also get an additional silicone strap included in the box. While I usually prefer a bracelet, I am actually torn between the 2 straps as this is one of the most comfortable and well-designed silicone straps that I've ever worn. One problem I have always had with silicone straps is that the tail always sticks out way too much and the keeper seldom holds it in place well enough. This one however has a nice molded shape at the end of the tail which locks it very securely together with the keeper. Even G-Shocks that tend to have a similar design like this haven't been quite as effective for me at keeping the tail tucked away neatly. So considering all of this, I think that the biggest criticism that the Orient Star Diver 1964 is generally going to receive is probably the price. But I don't think that's entirely fair though, because we have to remember that this is not an Orient. This is an Orient Star, and a flagship sports model at that. When you buy an Orient Star instead of an Orient, you are no longer buying the absolute bang for the buck utility. What you are buying is some of the best value that you can get for the art of watchmaking. This includes, among other things, the high-end manufacturing processes, the better finishings, and the proven technologies that Seiko Epson Corporation has to offer. Things like Zaratsu polishing, solid build quality, design, and materials that meet ISO 6425 standards, and in-house movement production and regulation. In fact, the only area where this watch actually falls short of Orient's actual flagship watch, the Orient Star Skeleton, is that it doesn't have their latest 70-hour silicone escape wheel movement, and that watch tends to cost at least about 30 to 50% more. This definitely isn't the cheapest Orient Star watch around, especially when you compare it with their other ISO diver, which retails for about 40% less. But I think that this is a really good looking watch and not unreasonably priced at all, especially when you compare it with a Swiss-made watch of equivalent finishing and quality. That being said, it is also very unlikely that you will have to pay full retail price for this over the counter, even at the AD, which does make this all that much better of a value. I have absolutely no regrets getting this watch, and even if I had to pay market rate for it, I would still be pretty satisfied. In fact, it has already become a regular pick in my rotation, and I personally feel that it is one of the best looking watches that I currently own, and not to mention the most accurate. These Orient Stars definitely do seem ready to start competing with the entry-level Swiss offerings from brands such as Hamilton. In fact, I think that they are already starting to offer a better value than their legendary Seiko counterparts. And that wraps things up for this review. If you liked it and would like to see more like it, please consider giving me a like and subscribe down below, and I will see you in the next one.